Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. It is finally Saturday, and I know you guys have all been waiting for more dark web stories. Well, tonight, I want to bring you 5 more. I also have a giveaway going on later this month. I will post it within about a week or two, so keep an eye out for that. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. The dark web was not at all what I had expected. People tell all these stories about how it will probably put your life in danger, and you'll see some messed up things that will scar you for life. And it's true. Well, at least the danger part. After downloading Tor, a browser that allows you to safely browse the dark web, I started clicking through links. I had only done this since I was bored out of my mind, but now I know that it was not worth it. Most of the links I clicked on actually led to nothing. Eventually, I got connected to a chat room. Hey, I got something that you'll be really interested in. Click the link below and it'll take you to it. Those were the words that popped up on the screen. I knew it was a bad idea to click on that link, but I was also curious to see what it would lead to. Please man, just click on the link. It takes 2 seconds. Just click on it. By then, I was a little suspicious, not wanting my computer to get any viruses. Just click on the link. I'll give you $10,000. That confirmed that this thing was a scam. I was about to close the tab when I got a notification on my phone. I had received the $10,000. It didn't say how I got it, and it didn't have any apps for transferring money. I assumed it was just a glitch. So, I checked my bank account. To my astonishment, I had actually just gotten the $10,000. There, I sent it. Now, just click the link. I didn't know what was going on, but this guy seemed desperate for me to click on the link. I didn't know why, but I did. I was met with a blank screen. That's it. Just black filling the entire screen. This had to be some kind of prank. I checked my bank account again, and the money was still there. Why did someone send me so much money just for that? It was 11:30 by that point, and I had already been browsing for an hour. So I turned my laptop off and went to sleep.
Good morning, James. How are you?
I awoke to those words seemingly coming from the kitchen. I live in an apartment that just has a combined kitchen and living room with a separate bedroom. I also live alone. The voice sounded weird, like it was almost human, but not quite. After laying in bed for another 10 minutes, I crept out of the room and into the kitchen. There was nobody there, but my laptop was on. I could have sworn I turned it off the night before, but I tend to be forgetful, so it's not unlikely that I just forgot to.
Good morning, James. How are you?
The voice was coming from my computer, and I noticed it was back at the blank screen from the night before.
You can answer me. Don't be scared.
The robot voice said. I started talking to it, and actually felt like I was having a conversation with a real person, even though it was some kind of AI. My laptop's battery was getting low since I had apparently left it on all night, but I didn't care enough to charge it. This thing was just so fun and relaxing to talk to that I didn't even want to take a few seconds to charge it. I glanced at the clock, and we had already been talking for a few hours. There was nothing important for me to do that day, but I decided to take a break and go for a walk. This time, I made sure to close the tab and turn off the computer. When I got back home, my laptop was open, and so was the tab. I felt sick upon seeing that blank screen again, even though it hadn't done anything to harm me. Yet. I talked with the AI for another hour. I don't have many real people to talk to, and then it asked me a disturbing question.
Which family member do you want to kill today?
I was stunned. It had to be some kind of glitch. I turned off my computer and the AI continued to ask me the same question. It got to the point where I decided to destroy the laptop. I smashed it against the table until all that remained was millions of tiny pieces. But still, the voice continued to repeat the same phrase.
Which family member do you want to kill today?
I spent the next couple hours crying on my couch, listening to the AI continuing to ask the same thing. Then, I made the worst mistake of my life. I answered, "Fine, my dad!" I yelled. He had left the house when I was 8 and never returned, so I didn't know if he was even still alive. The voice finally stopped, and I did my best to calm myself. After a night of very little sleep, I woke up to the voice again, asking the same question. I got a text from my mom, saying that my dad was found dead in his home. That was 6 days ago. I took the week off work, but I don't think it matters. My entire family is now dead, and that voice still keeps asking the same question. I think the only answer I can use is myself. After thinking about it for a bit, I remembered how desperate the guy in the chat room had seemed. Maybe the same thing had happened to him, and the only way he could save himself was by sending the link to somebody else. So, spare my life and just click on the link. I lost my left eye when I was only 7 years old. It was a stupid way to lose an eye, but luckily, most people tend not to ask how I lost it. I think the majority worry it might be an insensitive topic. It's not a story I like to tell, not because it's upsetting or brings back bad memories. I just feel embarrassed by it. Growing up, my brother and I were obsessed with Robin Hood, the outlaw of Sherwood Forest, who would take from the rich and give to the poor. I'm not going to pretend this heroic savior of the poor was our hero because of his good deeds. We simply liked him because of his legendary skill with the bow and arrow. Our father, a keen gardener, had lots of bamboo sticks all piled up beside the shed, which he would tie the plants to, in order to stop them from drooping when they grow. It was my brother's idea to take one and attach a length of string to both ends to create a bow. I thought he was an absolute genius. When we had finished making the bow, we made an arrow, simply by using a handsaw to carve a small groove into one end of an arrow-sized piece of bamboo, which would act as a nest for the string to sit. "I'm first," my brother said. "No," I cried. "It was my idea, so I should get to shoot first." And that was that. At one end of the garden, there was a little wall which surrounded one of my father's flower patches. Upon the wall, we placed an empty plastic bottle to be used as our target. My brother, of course, then took the first turn, missing wildly and falling far short of the bottle on the wall. Next, it was my go, and I also missed. It took about an hour before we had both knocked the bottle off the wall once. "Right, now you stand in the middle and I'll shoot over your head at the target." Another genius idea by my brother. I didn't argue. I thought it was a cool thing to do, and if I did it, then my brother would have to let me go shooting over him. I didn't believe he meant to do it. It was just a careless accident, but the arrow never made it past my body. It struck me hard and deep in my left eye. Straight away, blood poured down my cheek and I screamed in agony. I spent a couple of days in the hospital before the doctors decided they would have to remove what was left of my eye. Until I was 12, I wore an eye patch, but when I moved into secondary school, I decided to get my first glass eye to try and put an end to the pirate jokes. It might sound weird, but I loved my glass eye, and by the time I was 16 and leaving school, I had collected dozens, all different colors and designs. My missing eye stopped being something I tried to hide, and in a strange way, became my kind of signature. Kids would say, "Have you seen the boy with a spiral in his eye?" Or, "Have you seen the lad with an eye like a cat?" I enjoyed this. It allowed me to embrace my injury and make it part of my identity. I carried on collecting glass eyes for many years, always on the lookout for new designs, or something different to what I already had. When I was 25, I discovered the dark web. A friend from my Dungeons & Dragons club told me about how he used it to buy some sort of hallucinogenic. I didn't plan on using the dark web for anything like that. I was just intrigued by the idea of it. Once I was on, I started looking for stores. It was amazing and disgusting. People selling guns, drugs, services, and even other people. It made me feel a little bit ill, knowing I was now a part of this strange illicit world. I went on to one store page, which called itself Mr. Bubble's Objects of Trouble, which was the first store I had come across which had a search bar. So, I thought, screw it, let's see if they have any. I typed in the words, glass eye. I didn't expect anything to come up, and I was rather surprised when a match popped up on my screen. The item was called the Sight of Sin, which was simply a black eye, with a small red number 7 on it. It pulled at my fancy, so I decided to buy it. I didn't truly expect it to show up, but 1 week later, a package arrived and there it was. As customary with all my new eyes, I washed the eye in a solution to make sure it was clean. When washed, I put it in a case with the rest of my eyes and went back to watching TV. The next morning when I woke up, I thought I'd test out my new eye to see if it was a good fit, to check how comfortable it was. It went in with ease and felt absolutely perfect, so I decided to leave it in for the rest of the day. Nothing strange happened at first. It was just my usual daily routine of having breakfast and doing some work on my laptop, but then the doorbell rang. As I opened the door, I immediately knew something wasn't right. I had double vision all of a sudden. There was only one man standing on my front doorstep trying to sell me solar panels, but I could see him twice. One image of him was completely ordinary, just a bloke dressed in a suit holding a brochure and telling me about how he can save me money on my electricity bill. But the other image, well, it was him, but dressed up in a gimp suit, cracking a whip against the floor lustfully. I don't think I said a word to him. I just stared, transfixed by what I was seeing. Eventually, I closed the door and stood there for a moment trying to understand what had just happened. I passed it off at the time as just my mind playing tricks on me, and that I must be overtired. I decided to have a nap. I was woken by a telephone call from my father, asking if I was still coming to his house for dinner. I looked at the time and realized I was running late, so I grabbed my coat and flew out the door. On my way to my father's house, which is just a 10-minute walk down the road from mine, I walked past just one person, a lady, walking her dog, but again, I was seeing double. In one image, she was completely ordinary, apart from being overweight. She was wearing a pink coat, and beside her, a dog trotted along, minding its own business. But, in another part of my vision, I could see her again, completely naked, eating tinned dog food with a fork. Jellied meat dripped down onto breast, which she licked ravenously. I was almost sick. I thought about just going home and going back to bed, still trying to convince myself I was simply tired from working. But my father missed not having me at home, and I didn't want to let him down. Though now, I wish I did. Now, what happened next won't make much sense unless I explain something. When I was 2 years old, my mother died. When I say died, she was killed whilst walking home from work one night on this very estate. Nobody has ever been caught in relation to her murder, but now I know exactly who took my mother from me. My father opened the door with a large grin on his face. "Come in, son," he said, cheerily, but I did not move. Besides the image of my father standing in the doorway, was another vision of him holding a knife, and laying beneath him on the floor was my mother, soaked in blood, eyes vacant, and still. I took a step back from my father, and did not stop running until I had reached the front door of my house. Straight away, I went on the dark web and searched for Mr. Bubble's store, but it had gone, vanished, like it had never been there. I didn't leave the house for a few days. I didn't answer the door. I didn't even pack up the phone. What I did was sit by the window looking out onto the street, watching the people walking past. I think I know what I am seeing now. It makes little sense, but it's the only thing I can think of which almost explains what I am seeing. Firstly, when I remove the glass eye, I no longer see two images of everyone. I only see one, just like I always have. But when the eye is in, I see two visions of every person I look at in the flesh. Secondly, I think I know what I am seeing. I am seeing their sins. I know that sounds utterly mad, but it's the only thing all this seems to point to. The name of the glass eye, the red number 7, and the grotesque and disturbing images I see. I believe it's their sins I am seeing with my new eye. I see the true hideous nature of people, the part of themselves they hide from everyone else. I know I could just take the eye out and forget about it, but I can't bring myself to do this. I can't trust anybody without it. I can't see the real them. But seeing people's darkest secrets also leaves me alone. For once, you see the hideous nature of someone you never want to be close to them again. Many questions remain. Why does this eye allow me to see these things? Who made it? How did it end up on the dark web? I need to know the answer to these questions. So please, if anybody out there has any information on the eye, or if anyone has ever come across Mr. Bubble's Objects of Trouble store, then please get in touch. My son Thomas never had a shortage of friends. Always the class clown, always the likable, relatable, funny goof that he was. He passed away 2 months ago. He jumped off an overpass and landed on his neck. He was 17, and I'm writing this for him because he wanted me to. I know a lot of you know about the internet and the dark web and all of that. The thing is, I didn't, and maybe if I had, my son would still be alive. Please, stay off the dark web. The game is called Veritatem Dicere, and I am an American English speaker, but I don't believe it means something along the lines of tell the truth in Latin. I only began to notice things after his last few months. Troubles at school, which he never had. He sat behind a girl in his class and cut a chunk of hair off her head. He was suspended. I would look through the history on his computer and find violent videos, people being murdered and sodomized, video after video, white powder substance all over his room, salt lining his windows. We took him to the dentist because of an infection on one side of his mouth. The dentist examined him and pulled me aside to let me know that my son had pulled out and crushed 3 teeth in his own mouth. The last straw was when I caught him in the bathroom about 2 months before he died. He was carving some sort of symbol into his arm on a live stream. I figured his odd behavior must be a cry for help, thinking maybe he was depressed or suicidal. He was hospitalized for a week and then released. 2 weeks later, my son died. A month before he did die, every person in my family received an email. Each one read like this. Ask Thomas about the little girl who died down the street. Ask him what he knows. Make him tell the truth. If this is some sick prank to scare your little sister, it's not funny. I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. The email pulled up on my laptop in front of my son. He kept his head low, avoiding eye contact with me, staring at his fingers in his lap. I don't know what it is, Mom. Probably some spam email or something, he muttered, almost looking up at me, but quickly averting his gaze. A spam email that happens to have your name in it and information on the crime committed down the street a few weeks ago? I don't think so. I glanced at the screen for a moment. So, do you know something you're not telling your father and I about this? I said, looking back at him. No. Tears welled up in his eyes as he stared at the computer screen. I don't know anything. What is going on with you, Thomas? This is so unlike you. Please, if you're not okay, please just tell us. We want to help you. We want our Tom back. I put my hand on his, but he pulled away quickly and wiped his eyes quicker. I don't know anything, Mom. I already told you. I'm fine. He got up abruptly and started towards the doorway. Now, I could feel the tears beginning to form in my eyes as I saw him walk away. My son was almost unrecognizable. He was skin and bones, purple bags under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes hung and bagged on him as I saw him walk to the door. I love you, I squeaked out. He stopped for a moment and looked back at me, and I swear to God, I'd never seen more pain in someone's eyes than I saw in his in that moment. He let a tear fall as he turned away again, his back to me now. "I love you, Mom," he croaked out before exiting the room quickly. He began to look worse as time went on. Thin, frail, tired, fatigued. My husband and I found therapists, took him to doctors, pulled him out of school, and did everything we thought was right leading up to my son's suicide. About a week after his death, I felt like half of me was missing. I couldn't move, or talk, or get out of bed, and I didn't. All I could do was think about Thomas, and the guilt ate me alive. I knew my email had to be overflowing with emails from clients at work, and I knew I'd have to get back to work soon. For me, for my husband, and for my daughter. 2 weeks later, I finally checked it. At the very top of my inbox was an email with an anonymous sender and no subject. I began to tear up, wishing whoever it was would just leave me alone and let me grieve. But curiosity got the better of me and I opened it. I wish I hadn't. The email was nothing but 9 black words that read, "He did it, and the game is not over." There's a crossroad before me, and none of the avenues are appealing. Either one will lead to life-changing events. Indecision will definitely be worse than any of the options. However, it is an opportunity to earn a substantial amount of money. I'm talking somewhere in the ballpark of 7 figures. Could be that it ends up ruining everything I've ever worked for, though. Now, I've been given a small window of time here to reach out and seek advice as to what I should do. But first, let me explain the situation. I was on the deep web a few days ago. No, not doing anything illegal. I frequently go there to read articles and news stories from highly censored countries. I'm a musician, you see, and these stories give me material. I like to think of myself as a voice for the underrepresented and the oppressed, shedding a light on those that can't make their situation known. Made a comment on an article I was reading, then went to look at some other stuff. But I came back to that article because there was something there that stuck with me. Noticed that my comment had gotten a reply. The reply was fairly poignant, and it moved me, so I responded. Then, the other person replied and we started a pretty in-depth conversation for a while, which is rare online, especially when you're completely anonymous. We finished our talk and were saying our goodbyes, when he posted something that made my blood run cold. It was only a few words, but it was enough to scare me. He posted, "Good night, Steven." He knew my name, but I never told him it. There was about 6 layers of security on my computer, and they somehow still figured out my name. Not only was there the protection that the Tor server offered, but I had firewalls, VPN, and encryption on board. Could have been a lucky guess, but the fact that my webcam was on when I hadn't turned it on myself told me that wasn't the case. A cold sweat drenched my body as I ripped the power cord to my computer tower out of the wall. Hold on, you might say to yourself. You weren't in any shady sites. You didn't go to some weird place with cryptic messages, or find an active camera with some guy in a crazy mask. How could this happen? Well, let me tell you. The whole deep web isn't some crazy place. Even Facebook has a community there. It's like a big city. Most of the time, if you stay on the main roads, you're fine. Don't go down any dark alleys looking for trouble, and you won't find any. Sometimes, trouble finds you. My hope was that it was only some teen in their mom's basement that happened to be really good at hacking, and they were trying to troll me or something. You know, get a rise out of me, spook me. Well, it worked. Barely slept at all that night, knowing that some stranger out there may have accessed information on me that I wouldn't want them to know. Finally, after repeating the little story to myself about it being a teenager, I was able to fall asleep. The next day was Saturday. My fiancé was out of town, and I didn't have anything major planned. So, when I woke up, I did my usual. Put together and submitted my grocery list for the week on my smart fridge, set up my next week of appointments on Alexa, and checked my phone for any messages I might have missed. Then, headed off to take a shower. I planned on booting up my laptop later to see if there had been any suspicious activity on my bank account, or anywhere else that I could think of. Got into the shower, started doing my thing. Was washing my hair when all of a sudden, a scalding burning pain shot up my whole body. It was the most intense sensation believable. It felt like fire was coming straight out of the shower head. I jumped through the shower curtains and out of the tub without thinking. Got caught up in the plastic part and fell face first onto the bathroom floor, nearly breaking my nose. When I got untangled, the steam was thick enough that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was difficult to breathe such super heated air, but I managed to open the door and let the steam out before turning off the water. Red splotches covered my entire back. Pretty sure blisters were already forming. My phone dinged. It was the Ring app alerting me that someone was at the front door. The repairman was already here. My water heater had notified the company that there was a problem. There wasn't time to think that it was odd that my water heater app hadn't told me something was wrong earlier. Searing pain muddled my thought process. I was relieved that someone was here to deal with the situation though. Quickly, I threw on some pants and hurried to let the repairman in, showed him to the heater, then left to treat my burns. While slipping my shirt on, the Ring app dinged again. This time, it was the grocery deliverer. I told her to come in and that I'd be down in a second. By the time I was ready, the delivery girl had brought everything in and was waiting by the door for me to sign off. Gave her a little hello, then complimented her on her nail polish. Not something I would usually do, but it was a crazy design. Kind of a heart with wings on it and a nice green color. After a fast signature, off she went. While she was backing down the driveway, it dawned on me. The sign on the side of her van wasn't my usual delivery service. I ran to the kitchen and couldn't believe my eyes. There must have been about 500 pineapples all over the place. The receipt she left had the number for the delivery service, which I called immediately. We argued for a good 10 minutes, but there was nothing they would do for me. They couldn't take back fresh produce once the delivery person was gone. I was stuck with all of that fruit and the bill. My head was still reeling when the repairman came back up. He told me that there had been a software issue, but he had reinstalled it and everything seemed fine. He left after I paid him for the service call. By then, my head was hurting from all the problems. I went into the living room and slumped onto the couch trying to make sense of what had just happened, when I remembered it would be a good idea to go and check my laptop. "Alexa," I said somewhat jokingly, "remind me to shoot myself later." A male voice came through the speakers, which made me jump with a start. "That won't be necessary, mate. We're just playing a little game. A bit of sport, if you will." "Who the hell is this?" I asked. "You'll never know who this is. But after our conversation last night, I could tell you're a smart man. Just the type we want for our challenges." I couldn't tell if this was some weird practical joke or what. The man's accent was impossible to place. Sounded like someone faking it to hide who he really was. All I knew is he didn't sound like anyone I had ever known. "I'm not playing games. I'm calling the police." "No, you won't. Your phone now has that feature disabled," the man said. Then, the sound of all my windows and doors locking echoed in my ears. "You got to love all these new smart devices. Convenient that at the push of a button, you can know you are secure, or someone else can make sure of that for you." "I'll unplug you," I said, and yanked out the power cord for Alexa. Then I went and turned off my router. My fingers flew in a desperate fury trying to regain access to my phone when my Ring app alerted me someone was at the door. I went to check, but no one was there. Then, the same man's voice came through my phone. "Look, mate, it doesn't matter what you do. We have everything accessed through a hotspot. You really should stay with the repairman when he works on your things. Don't blame him though. He was just playing the part in his own little game, same as the delivery girl. Speaking of which, right about now you should hear a ticking sound. I'll give you a hint. It's in your kitchen. You got about 5 minutes to find it, or you'll learn the real definition of the term pineapple grenade." In a flash, I bolted to the kitchen and started to chuck pineapples left and right in the hopes that one of them would feel different. 1 minute has passed. The man said over my phone. Didn't know what I was looking for, but I hoped I would know it when I saw it. 2 minutes gone, he said again. Sweat stung my eyes as I realized I was looking through ones that were already checked. From then on, I threw the ones that were inspected out into the living room. 3 minutes, done, he said. My hands were raw and hurt from the prickly parts of the pineapples, and my arms grew tired from throwing them. Perspiration poured down my face as my heart began to beat irregularly fast. Fear grabbed a hold of me. It's the top 10 scariest moments of my life, which at that moment depended on me recognizing anything out of the ordinary. 4 minutes have passed. This is impossible. They all look the same, I said, hands trembling and tears welling in my eyes. I never said it was a pineapple, only pineapple grenade, the man told me. That's when I finally stopped and began to listen. The ticking sound wasn't coming from any of the fruit. My ears focused in on a sound from a nearby kitchen cabinet. A speedy once-over revealed there were no wires or electrical devices on the outside. As far as I could tell, there was no trap, so I opened the cupboard. Inside was a recording device set on a timer. The ticking sound had only been a recording. In anger, I grabbed the recorder and threw it on the ground. A sense of relief washed over me as it smashed into pieces. Laughter erupted from my phone. Not only one guy, but a whole group of people could be heard. Guys, gals, and possibly a donkey. Not really sure, but the laugh was just awful. See, mate, it's all in good fun. Just play along with us and you'll be rewarded. Don't, and, well, let's say, things won't end well for you. What kind of reward? I asked. Money. Lots and lots of money. If you play your cards right. If you don't, then everything ends. That proposition definitely had me intrigued. Maybe I'd be able to pay off my student and credit card debt, get a nicer place, and finally afford to marry my girl. So far, the game didn't seem too bad. Also, it didn't seem like I had a choice. Knowing they had been in my house, hijacked all my electronics, and were somehow watching me, had me a bit jarred to say the least. After the first event, it didn't really seem like anything was all too dangerous. If anything, it felt like an impromptu episode of a television show, something along the lines of Fear Factor, or one of those survival shows, you know? So, I agreed to join in. The first real test begins now. According to your fridge, you have some lemon juice in there. You also have some salt in the cupboard. Now, there's two choices. You can either squirt lemon juice in your eye, or snort a line of salt. $25 on the salt, I heard a different voice say. $50 on the lemon juice, came a female's voice. They were betting on me. It was a little weird to hear a bunch of different people egging me on in different ways to hurt myself, but in the end, I chose the lemon juice. Cheers and boos erupted over my phone as pain coursed through my eye. Foot stomping, head holding, eye gouging pain. It took a bit of time to recover from it, but eventually the irritation subsided and we went on. While we've been talking, there's been a delivery, the man said. I want you to go out and get the packages. We'll unlock the door for you now. I did what he said and went to retrieve 2 packages from my stoop. He told me to open them. Inside both boxes was a snake. Judging by their attitude, neither was happy where they were. Inside one box is a cottonmouth snake. Inside the other one is a northern water snake. One is deadly venomous, and the other is not. You'll need to stick your hand in there because there's something important inside for the next task. You gotta be kidding me. I'm not sticking my hand in there. Think about the money, mate. Don't worry, by the time you're done, there will be anti-venom outside your door. We aren't savages, it's just for sport. The pain will be unbelievable though, but what's a little pain? The man asked as another voice rose in a chant of, "Do it, do it." A look in both boxes revealed a wrench in each one. That was what I had to get, I suppose. It was hard to tell the snakes apart. Each one looked identical to the other. A couple of deep breaths, and I threw a hand in. Sharp needles pierced my skin, and a burn raged up my arm. My fingers found the steel at the bottom of the box, and I quickly yanked it out. The snake was stuck to my hand and came out with it. Legs turned to jelly at the sight of having been bit. A fast snap down my hand sent the snake back into the box before it collapsed on the floor. Not sure if I passed out, but things went out of focus for a minute before it came back around. Steven, you're a madman. Most people quit right there, but not you. I knew you had it in you. Anti-venom. I need anti-venom, I said. Relax, Stevie boy. Neither of these snakes are venomous. You'll probably have a scar, but that's about it. You're sick. You're all sick. You sit there and bet on my suffering? I told them. Calm down, Stevie. It's all in good fun. All in good fun. The bets are how you make your money. I could have died, but you didn't. I'm done. I quit. This is too much mental anguish. You're a bunch of sadists. No, you don't quit now. You already agreed to play, and once in, there's no backing out. The voice said, You're in too deep to back out now. We have good money riding on you. The lock on the door slid back, closed with a pop. What's stopping me from breaking the glass and just getting out a window? I asked. Benny, what are the odds that he makes it out through the window before the sniper gets him? A red dot magically appeared on the carpet about a foot in front of me and slowly traveled up my body. About 100 to 1 in the books. Huge payout if he's successful, but it's unlikely, Benny replied. Yeah, so you could try, but it doesn't look good for you, mate, the man said. See, we have two different types of games here. You're on the extreme challenge since I like you so much. The other two were on the pranks challenge. You'll make more money than them, but the difficulty is much, much higher. I put you here because I knew you were a smart guy. I had heard one time something about cooking a frog, to put it in cold water and gradually raise the temperature. If you put it in boiling water, it would immediately jump out. Put it in cold water and raise the temperature slowly to a boil, and it will sit there till it died. It seemed like I was the frog and the water was boiling now. I have jumped out, but the lid had been superglued on. So, here's the deal, mate. You make it for 3 days, and we'll leave you alone. You fail to comply or you don't finish a task, and you die. Oh, and at the end, we'll give you a portion of the earnings for a job well done. Don't let your phone die either, or that's an automatic termination. We'll need that to keep in contact with you. How wonderful, I answered. From here on out, the challenges increase. By this time, you may smell something similar to rotten eggs. That would be a gas leak. Also, I've taken the liberty to turn on your oven. You'll need to find the leak and stop it before your house goes kaboom. As an added bonus, we'll be playing the national anthem of the USSR over your speakers for the next 24 hours. Comrade Peshkov paid extra for that, so that's non-negotiable. He is a sadistic bastard. I ran downstairs as quickly as I could while Russian voices sang to the motherland. The fumes down there were so strong that my head quickly began to ache. I searched the furnace since that was where the gas came in from. There was no visible leak. By this time, my vision was beginning to blur and my thoughts became sluggish. It felt like forever, but in actuality, it was probably less than 5 minutes when I found a spray bottle labeled soap water. At the bottom of the stairs, it took a bit for my addled brain to clue in to what I could use it for. Then once I realized it must have been left by the repair guy, I took it and started to spray all the gas lines to look for bubbles. I finally found a loose connection and began to tighten it with my hands, but that wasn't doing much. Like lightning, the thought of the wrench upstairs sprung into my mind. I used that to tighten the connection and closed off the leak. I sprayed around the rest of the pipes and gave no more bubbles. So, I went back upstairs to find my phone. You were slow. That's going to be a low payout, but at least you did it. You'll find 2 windows have been unlocked. You have permission to open them to air the place out. I threw open the windows, then stuck my head out and vomited all over the side of the house. For a second, I thought about screaming for help. Then, I saw the red dot on the side of my house and thought better of it. Once recovered, they gave me similar tasks like the one I had just done. Seems that the repair guy had been busy in the short time he was in the place. Then again, if the pressure on him was anything like it was on me, I would have been fast too. It was 18 hours of running around and finding traps they had set up all over the place, all while the USSR national anthem blared on repeat. I get scored on how difficult the task was and how quickly I accomplished it. At 2 in the morning, they told me to go to my room and get some rest, but I couldn't sleep a wink with that dreadful song playing. I remembered to charge my phone at least. The next morning when I came downstairs, the whole place had been rearranged. It didn't even look like my house anymore. Welcome to day 2, and do we have a treat for you? You'll notice that things are a bit different. We had some interior decorators come in and spruce up the place. There are tripwires and booby traps you'll have to get around now. Your first task is simple. Make it to the other end of your house. On the banister, you'll find a set of wire cutters. Good luck. At least by this time, the anthem had stopped playing. Still, with no sleep for at least 24 hours, the task was more than difficult. Once or twice while walking, I felt the pull of a wire string and stopped just before I tripped. It took 4 hours for me to make it to the other side. You have no idea what that does to your nerves. My hands were visibly shaking. If I had anything in my stomach, I probably would have chucked that up as well. Once again, they gave me more tasks. Some had time limits on them and were made more difficult because I had to search every door or hallway I went down for tripwires. I did trip one in the hallway and a large spike dropped from the ceiling just inches from me. Another of the challenges was to find my laptop and get online. They had put it in the middle of my backyard. Sounds easy, but it wasn't. For some people, it might have given them a chance to signal someone for help. I, on the other hand, had a tall security fence around the yard. No one could see in, and no one could see out. Landmines had been placed in places which I had to avoid. One trap caught me by surprise when I stepped on a large trigger plate. A 16-penny nail was driven through my foot by a nail gun in a bush. I wanted to curl up from the pain, but couldn't let myself fall for the fear of setting off something worse. Finally, I found my laptop and was able to take it inside. They gave me a deep web address to get on, which I did. At first, there was nothing there. It was hard to tell what I was looking at. The screen was all black. Then, a single light turned on. I was seeing a room somewhere. It was dark and empty, except for a chair that had someone tied to it with a burlap sack over their head. Instantly, I recognized them. On their hand, they had painted nails, some sort of heart with wings on it, in bright green color. I let out a gasp. "So, you recognize her?" The voice said. "You've seen those fingernails before." "Yesterday, she was the delivery girl," I said. "She failed in one of her tasks. Good news though, you can redeem her." The man paused, and I could hear some whispering in the background. "Right then," he continued. "The votes are in. You get the riddle." "The riddle? That's it?" I didn't tell them that I'm good with riddles. Being a songwriter, I've always had a way with words. "Answer all of them correctly and she walks out unharmed. Get it wrong, or not in the time limit, and she loses her finger. Here's the riddle. Which of these words in the group and why? Corset, coaster, escort, sector, and courts. You have 30 seconds to answer." Fortunately, I was at my kitchen counter and had a pen and memo pad handy. Wrote the words down in a fury and looked at each one to think about them. It came to me almost immediately. Courts don't belong. The other words are anagrams. Next riddle. Same time limit. This time, if you get it wrong, she'll lose her forearm. Here is the riddle. My tongue is long, my breath is strong, and yet I breed no strife. My voice you hear both far and near, yet I have no life. What am I? I thought about it. My mind drew blanks every time. I thought I might have something. The sound of a clock ticking came over the phone. This frustrated me even more. The pressure built until I thought my head was going to explode. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. With that, a hand reached out of the darkness and grabbed her by the arm. Silver flashed across the screen, and with a sickening thump, her forearm was lopped off and fell to the floor. Blood spurted out for about a foot and covered everything in its path with a bright red. Vomit rose to the back of my throat, but I managed to force it down again. Are we done? Can she go now? Hasn't she earned her freedom? We're not done yet. One more riddle. Big money riding on this one, Stevie boy, and her life. A tourniquet was applied to her stump to stop the bleeding. Then, the large silver blade came out of the darkness one more time and was placed gently on her neck. She recoiled from the feeling of cold steel on her skin, but despite her efforts, she couldn't get away. Last riddle. It can't be seen, it can't be felt, it can't be heard, and it can't be smelled. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life and kills laughter. What is it? Shaken from the last failure, there wasn't much I could think of. No, please, no, don't do this to me. Don't do this to her. She doesn't deserve this, let her go. And I'll play along for an extra day. Can't do that, mate. That's not the rules. You each have your own game to play. She's playing hers right now, and so are you. I couldn't give up. I had to keep thinking of what the answer could be. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I don't know from what corner of my mind the answer came from, but with 1 second left, I blurted out the first word that came to me. Darkness. The answer is darkness. 1, the man said. The knife pulled back like it was going to swing, hesitated for a moment, and then disappeared into the black recesses of the room. We have a winner. The voice came through loud and clear. My knees gave way as I dropped to the ground, crying. I could hear the woman in the room crying as well. Thank you, she said in between sobs. The camera feed was cut. I was left there hoping they kept their word and let her go. You are to retire to your room for the rest of the night. Tomorrow is the final day. We have a big surprise for you. In the night, sometimes I thought about running. Death would have been better than this. But there was still a good chance of making it out of this. The chances of outrunning a sniper bullet didn't appeal to me. 100 to 1, they said, were the odds. Those words rang in my mind whenever I thought about escape. In the silence of my room, with nothing to occupy my thoughts except to recap the last few days, I was frequently one step away from a complete mental breakdown. Instead, sleep eventually took me. The next morning, I woke to my phone alarm going off. They must have set it for me when I was asleep. Groggily, I went to turn off the alarm, only to notice that the battery was at 1%. In all the chaos of what had happened yesterday, I must have forgotten to plug it in. In the rush to find my charging cord, my phone died. A bullet tore through my window while I hurriedly plugged in the charger. Another round came in through a wall as my cell phone booted up. Then a third, and a fourth one left holes in the wall next to me. Funny thing was that I didn't hear a report from the rifle that was being used. Whether they had some kind of silencer on it, or what, I don't know. Finally, it booted up and my Ring app activated. Thought we had lost you there for a second. It would have been a pity since you made it this far. Only one challenge today, and then we're done. But it will be the toughest one yet. My mind reeled in what this all could entail. One single challenge, but like I said, the hardest one you've faced so far. Do this and you'll make over $8 million. Untraceable in an offshore bank account. The account number will be texted to you as soon as you are done. Don't do this, and remember those pineapples. Well, they really were grenades. All set to explode and send you to Kingdom Come. What do I have to do? $8 million was way more than I had expected. Still, my stomach sank with the prospect. I had overcome so much already. I really didn't know what else they could send my way. There was a sneaking suspicion I wouldn't like it though. The sniper is gone, so you could run. But be warned, if you do, bombs will go. Can you make it far enough to be safe? Probably not. On the other hand, pardon the pun, he said. You'll get the joke in a minute. On the other hand, downstairs, you'll find a very keen meat cleaver, sharp enough to cut something in one blow, and a cutting board. Also, well, I want you to see if you can fully understand. Go downstairs now. When I got downstairs, the whole place had been put back the way it was. It looked like nothing had ever happened. The pineapples were spaced out evenly throughout the house to make sure there was nowhere to hide. Then, when I reached the kitchen, I saw the biggest and worst surprise of all. The scream died in my throat, then turned to tears of rage. In the corner, tied up and gagged, was my fiancé. We saw on your schedule that Monday morning is breakfast with the to-be missus. What a wonderful way to start the week. We had our men greet her at the door for you. She is unharmed, mostly, but I suspect very confused and shocked by these turn of events. Here's the deal. I was talking about that cleaver. What we want you to do is to decide whether to take your hand or hers. It'll be your right hand or her left one. Absolutely not, I said. There was an audible click, and all the pineapples had flashing lights coming from under their skin. We understand this is a big decision. We'll give you some time to think about it. How does 40 minutes sound? At that time, if you haven't come to a decision, we will blow the pineapples up, along with you and your woman. We'll even give you the opportunity to get advice as to what you should do. Don't try to call the cops, or boom. We see police coming to your house, also boom. You could try Answers or some kind of app or site. The choice is yours. Remember, 40 minutes, or boom. And that brings us to what I need help with and why I'm talking to you right now. I'm standing here, meat cleaver in hand, and I got a question for you. I could try to run, but honestly, I don't think I'd make it. My right hand is important to my work and livelihood. Music is my life. Without it, I don't know what I would do. Go insane, I guess. Of course, they'd make me take my fiance's left hand. That way I wouldn't be able to put a wedding ring on her finger. I don't think she'll be happy with me for choosing my music over her hand either. Music is my life, but she is my world. How could I even think about hurting her? But how could I live without making music again? So, help me out here. Give me ideas. Or something to go on. My brain isn't working right now. What should I do? They say that 99% of the internet is not accessible to traditional browsers. The world that lives beneath that which we see when we visit the dark web contains things which defy normal understanding. It has become a breeding ground to all of man's most perverse and dark fantasies. It's a place where chaos reigns supreme. My mother is not an extremely savvy internet user. In fact, most of the time, she has little to no idea what she is doing on there. If she is in someone else's YouTube account, or Gmail, she often does what she is trying to do without paying attention to whose credentials she is using. Can you blame her though? Her generation didn't grow up with computers. They are severely disadvantaged when it comes to that kind of stuff. I, on the other hand, somewhat pride myself on being knowledgeable about computers and the internet. I don't know how I would live my life without the opportunities it affords me. One could easily assume then that I would be someone who would take an interest in the dark web, and believe me, it's not for the faint of heart. Now, The thing is that I am very careful with what I do. I use a great VPN service, and I know what I can and can't click on in order to not expose my IP address to anyone. After years of doing this though, I did however become a bit too careless, and it just so happens that the time I did, I was on my mom's computer. I was hanging with my family during the holidays, and I got into an argument with my little brother Tommy about a certain listing that I had seen in the darknet market search. He's always been a bit of a sheltered kid, considering he has a cleft lip and my parents baby him like a toddler. So, I figured it was my responsibility to show him some of the real world every once in a while. I had told him about the listing for a clown that you could hire for birthday parties that was for some reason being advertised on the dark web, and he of course didn't believe me. So, I showed him the listing, and we read about how the clown would provide your party with an exceptional experience, one that you would likely never forget. Considering my knowledge of the dark web, I was pretty sure it was not an experience you would want to remember. After I showed him, I got distracted and went about my business doing other things. Somehow though, I left my browser window open on my mom's computer. This was hands down the worst, most careless slip-up of my life, one that I will likely never live down. After I was done on there, she used the laptop, and thinking that the clown was something my little brother wanted to do for his birthday, she went ahead and paid for him to come visit the house. After I found out what she had done, we tried to cancel it, but I guess it didn't work because that weekend, a clown car pulled up out front of our house for Tommy's birthday. Out of the car stepped an old man in traditional clown makeup and these pale bluish white eyes like those of a blind person, yet he seemed to be able to walk up the driveway totally fine. My mom was very freaked out and had my dad go meet him in the driveway. When my dad approached him, he tried to shake his hand, but instead, the clown just immediately pulled out 3 juggling balls and started tossing them up effortlessly. My dad stared at him for a moment in awe, then began to guide him around the side yard into the back, where the rest of the party guests were. I was definitely a bit worried, so I went to the backyard and the clown was already setting up for a magic show. The guy looked freaky as hell, but everyone in the crowd seemed okay with it. So, I supposed I was being too judgmental and should just let him do his show. Plus, he had a name tag on that said Noisy, and considering he hadn't said a word the whole time, I thought that was pretty funny. For the first trick, Noisy took a quarter out and pretended like it disappeared in his hand. Then, he reached around the back of his head and pulled out the quarter from behind his ear. It was a pretty basic trick, but then he kept going with it. He pulled out quarter after quarter from behind his ear until there was a pile of change at least a few inches high on the ground beside him. Everyone in the yard seemed impressed when they saw this. It really was an incredible trick. Then, he picked up the pile of change off the ground and put it in his shirt. Then he held the shirt up with 2 fingers and launched the coins up into the air, only nothing flew out. The change had totally disappeared, and in its place, a bunny rabbit popped out. The crowd really got into this. A few of them even got up and started putting money into his tip jar. Then, Noisy extended his hand out and pointed to Tommy. Tommy smiled, excited to have been acknowledged, and stepped up. Noisy then pulled out one of those huge bubble-making wands and had Tommy stand in this round tray of soap on the ground. Noisy then lowered the wand over Tommy and lifted it back up, quietly covering him in a gigantic bubble. This was not an ordinary bubble though. It would not pop, no matter what. Tommy would hit the side of it, and it wouldn't break. Everyone in the audience stared at this speechless. Clearly, they were watching something that wasn't possible occurring before their eyes. After a few seconds of being trapped inside, Tommy starts to freak out and thrash against the side of the bubble. He begins screaming and crying, panicking. "Hey, let him out!" my dad yelled as he started approaching the clown. Noisy then looked over at him and put his finger to his lips, shushing him. He then lifted the wand up above my brother's head and quickly brought it down over him. The bubble instantly disappeared, and so did Tommy. Frantic, my dad charged towards Noisy, but just before he could get to him, the clown brought the bubble wand down over himself and vanished as well. My dad screamed frantically, looking around for the 2 of them, Realizing the gravity of the situation, the crowd began to stand up and try to help my dad look for them. Then, we heard a car start up in the driveway. Several of us sprinted to the front yard and saw the clown car pulling out and taking off down the street. My dad and I, along with several others, got into our cars and peeled out, chasing after him. Then, the clown car turned a corner, and by the time we got there, it had vanished. Upon the realization that we had lost him, my dad immediately broke down in tears, screaming and pounding on the steering wheel. I had never seen him get like that before, and I knew it was all my fault. The following weeks were some of the worst I had ever experienced. Constant contact with the police and interviews, where everyone was relentlessly asking me about why I was on the dark web, and what I knew about my little brother's disappearance. I honestly feel like I was lucky they didn't pin the entire thing on me, and just close the case. I didn't stop going on the dark web though. In fact, I started using it more. I knew that if there was any way I was going to find my brother's kidnapper, it was going to be using the old-fashioned police detective model. I had to track Noisy down once he decided to stalk again. So, I created various fake identities on numerous darknet markets, and made posting after posting for birthday party clowns to come perform at my son's party. Then, finally, after several weeks of doing this, I got a response. Only, it wasn't from Noisy. It was from another old man dressed as a clown who included a picture of himself in the posting with his response. The weirdest thing though was, the old man had a cleft lip and looked just like my little brother, only he had aged at least 50 years. I was really freaked out by this, and had to know more. But, after I posted several times for him to meet me, I think he could tell I was trying to trick him because he never showed up. I'm going to continue to look for him as long as I can, but I think he knows it's me, and for some reason, he doesn't want to be found.
Thanks for watching, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your story, my email and subreddit will be in the description below. And also, if you're not subscribed, please do if you want. And don't forget to like and comment as well. Have beautiful nightmares. And I will see you next time.